Julian said I was the anchor dragging his career down. His lover, Sloane, agreed. She pushed me off our gorgeous yacht into the icy Puget Sound. I heard Julian's laugh as he sped away, leaving me in the dark. That was at 9:17 p.m. 2 hours later, at 11:17 p.m., Julian got a call. It was me, my voice terrifyingly calm. Ever heard of Aegis Solutions? My brother says hello. The chilled champagne flute felt slick in my hand, a useless prop on a deck full of sharks. This was Julian's night, another extravagant fundraiser for NaviZero, his automated maritime tech startup, hosted on a luxury yacht slicing through the twilight on Puget Sound. My husband, Julian Thorne, was the center of it all. A golden boy CEO charming millions out of men in identical navy blazers. And I was Eliza Vance, 32 years old, his wife, the financial risk analyst who had vetted his seed round investors, the quiet ballast to his gleaming ambition. I understood numbers, probabilities, and catastrophic failure. I did not understand these people, these venture capitalists laughing too loudly or the brilliant, socially stunted engineers staring at their shoes. I felt exposed, out of my element, a walking vulnerability. Julian moved through the crowd like he owned the air they breathed. He had that gift a politician's smile wrapped around a surgeon's ambition. His hand was always moving, landing on a shoulder, clasping a forearm, and, too often, landing on Sloane Rivia. Sloane was his COO, all sharp angles and sharper intellect. She was ruthless in a way I recognized because I used the same focus to dismantle a balance sheet. I watched Julian laugh at something a venture capitalist said, his hand finding the small of Sloane's back. It was meant to look casual, a collegial gesture, but it wasn't. It lingered. I saw the way she looked at him when she thought no one was watching. It wasn't the admiration of a subordinate. It wasn't teamwork. It was possession. It was the look of someone who had already staked a claim and was just waiting for the paperwork to clear. I had tried to bring it up, weeks ago, in the sterile quiet of our kitchen. Julian, the way she touches you at meetings. It's not professional. He hadn't even looked up from his tablet. Eliza, please, don't be paranoid. A beat. I need you to be supportive of this, of me. Sloane is critical to NaviZero's success. The unspoken accusation hung in the air. You are not. My stomach tightened. I thought of my brother, Marcus. Marcus Vance was the founder of Aegis Solutions, one of the biggest private intelligence and cybersecurity firms on the West Coast. Marcus was my true north. He was grounded, brilliant, and protective to a fault. He never called me paranoid. He called me his best analyst. I slipped away from the polished chatter, needing a moment inside the main cabin. Julian was in a quiet corner by the bar, his back to me, his phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, reassuring. Marcus, listen, it's handled, Julian said. My heart did a slow, painful kick drum roll. He was talking to my brother. That security hole you flagged? It's patched. We ran the diagnostics this morning, solid as a rock. I froze. It was a lie. A bald-faced, stupid lie. Just yesterday, I had run a diagnostic on my own, a nervous habit, checking the firewalls between NaviZero's systems and the Aegis protocols Julian had sworn he wasn't using. The vulnerability was still wide open. He was lying directly to Marcus. I backed away before he could turn around, my mind racing. Why lie? Why about that? The party finally wound down hours later. The investors disembarked, smelling of expensive whiskey and mutual congratulations. The silence in the car on the way back to our sterile waterfront condo was heavy, suffocating. I was trying to find the words to ask about the phone call, but Julian spoke first. He didn't look at me. He just stared out at the dark Seattle skyline. You really need to act the part better at these things. Eliza, he said. His voice was flat, cold. You looked miserable. It makes me look bad. I stared at his perfect profile. The man I thought I knew dissolving into a stranger. He wasn't just dismissing my feelings anymore. He was reprimanding me for having them. The tension in the car was so thick I could barely breathe. He was right about one thing. I was miserable. But it wasn't because of the party. It was because of him. Julian's coldness was a catalyst. The paranoia he accused me of sharpened into professional focus. I'm a risk analyst. I don't just accept an anomaly. I dismantle it. His lie to Marcus wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a red flag flapping in a hurricane. I still had full administrative access to Navi Zero's financials. I was, after all, one of the initial seed investors, the one who'd used her own reputation to assure the first round of funders that the books were clean. I waited until 3 in the morning, the house silent except for the hum of the servers in Julian's home office. I bypassed his personal firewall, a laughably simple one, and went deep into the company's accounting ledgers. It was all there, clean and polished for the board. But I wasn't looking at the polished surface. I was looking for the cracks. I found it buried in a holding company account, masked as a discretionary R&D fund. It was a sub-account, one he clearly thought I'd never look for. It was labeled Project Odysseus. The account was a flurry of activity, large payments, 6 figures at a time, moving out. The authorization code wasn't Julian's, it was Sloane's. The descriptions were vague: component acquisition, third-party consultation. This wasn't R&D. This was a slush fund. I brought it to him the next morning, feigning professional curiosity. Julian, I was reviewing the R&D burn rate for the quarterly report, and I can't reconcile the Project Odysseus spending. What is it? He smiled, that same charming, dismissive smile he used on investors. Babe, that's the big one. It's the stealth marine drone. It's completely top secret. Not even the main engineering team knows about it. He kissed my forehead. Don't worry your pretty head about it. It's all accounted for. Don't worry my pretty head. I smiled back, the expression feeling brittle on my face. I didn't stop. I took the wire transfer routing numbers from the Odysseus account and ran them through my own systems at home, the ones I used for my private consulting work, systems that had access to global banking databases. The money wasn't going to tech suppliers in Palo Alto or component manufacturers in Germany. It was being funneled through a series of transfers, finally landing in a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands, a company with no website, no board, and a single registered agent. The lie was suffocating. He wasn't building a drone. My next step was his email. I felt sick doing it, but the analyst in me had taken over. I didn't need his password. I had set up his private server. I looked for encrypted communication between him and Sloane. I found them. My initial search for keywords like love or us came up empty. My heart twisted with a strange, sick relief. This wasn't a simple affair. I changed my search terms. Asset, transfer, timeline. The results hit me like a physical blow. Encrypted messages discussing the logistics of an asset transfer. Dates, percentages, a final handoff. He was selling something valuable. The ringing of my phone made me jump, nearly knocking my coffee mug onto the keyboard. It was Marcus. My hand was shaking as I answered. Eliza. Hey, I've got a weird one, he said, his voice all business. You know that proprietary security protocol we developed for the DoD, the Aegis Corps? Yeah, of course, I said, my throat dry. Well, our internal alarms are flagging it. Hard. We're getting pings from a server cluster right in your backyard. It's Navi Zero's main server. Eliza, do you have any idea why Julian would be trying to access Aegis protocols? The room spun. That was the vulnerability Julian had lied about patching. He wasn't just near it, he was actively trying to use it. I looked at the encrypted emails on my screen. The asset transfer, the shell company, the lie to my brother. It all coalesced into a single, terrifying picture. No, I said. The word felt like swallowing glass. No, Marcus, I have no idea. Probably just a glitch in the system. You know how those startups are. It was the first time I had ever truly lied to my brother. My heart hammered against my ribs. A trapped bird. Right, Marcus said, unconvinced. A glitch. Listen, I'm sending a tech to look at your home network, just in case. Something doesn't feel right. I hung up, the silence of the office deafening. I knew what I had to do. I had to get inside Julian's server. Not the company server, but his personal one. The one he thought was impenetrable. Lying to Marcus felt like severing a lifeline. I was adrift, and the only way back to solid ground was through the truth. No matter how ugly, I went to my personal workstation, the one Julian never touched, the one he thought I just used for boring risk modeling. 2 years ago, when Julian first set up his private encrypted server, the one he bragged was unhackable, I had helped him configure the security protocols, and I had built myself a back door. It was an analyst's instinct, a contingency plan, a quiet way to verify, just in case. I had never used it, until tonight. My fingers flew across the keyboard, the code executing silently. I was in. His server was organized, meticulous, and arrogant. Folders for investors, for personal finances, for board strategies. And then I saw it. The root folder he thought was hidden. The one I'd seen in the accounting logs Project Odysseus. My breath hitched. I clicked it. It wasn't a slush fund for R&D. It was a data dump. Schematics, wireframe models, lines of source code, and a folder labeled Transaction. I opened it. It wasn't an affair. God, I almost wished it was. An affair is simple, human, pathetic. This was cold. This was colossal. The evidence was laid out with chilling clarity. Julian and Sloan were finalizing a sale. They were selling NaviZero's entire core AI navigation system, the revolutionary tech he'd built his reputation on, to a shadow competitor, a foreign entity I'd only heard whispers about. The price tag made me dizzy $300 million. I kept digging, my blood turning to ice. I found the core code, the Genesis file for the entire navigation AI. I stared at the lines of complex algorithms, and a cold, sick recognition washed over me. This wasn't Julian's work. I saw the digital fingerprints, the unique architecture. I knew this code. I had seen iterations of it for years. It was Marcus's. It was the stolen proprietary core algorithm from Aegis Solutions. The room tilted. Julian hadn't just used Aegis protocols. He had stolen the crown jewels. He had used me, our entire marriage, the late-night dinners with Marcus, the brotherly chats about cybersecurity, the casual questions about Aegis's new projects. He had used me as a living, breathing key to unlock my brother's life's work. He had exploited my trust to commit grand larceny on a scale I could barely comprehend, and now, he and Sloan were cashing out. They were selling my brother's genius for hundreds of millions and leaving a hollowed-out company behind. Leaving me. I searched for travel. The tickets were right there. 2 one-way first-class seats to Dubai, booked under his and Sloan's names. Departure 1 week from today. The betrayal was so total, so complete. It almost wasn't personal. I hadn't just been cheated on as a wife. I had been utilized, leveraged, and discarded like a bad investment. I was a tool in a massive, devastating theft. The paranoia he'd mocked, the lack of support, it was all just noise to keep me distracted while he ripped my family apart. My heart was a cold, hard knot in my chest. The shock had passed, replaced by a glacial calm. I wasn't a wife anymore. I was a risk analyst, and I was looking at the anatomy of a catastrophe. I activated my printer. Page after page slid out the wire transfer records to the shell company. The encrypted emails detailing the asset transfer, the flight itineraries, and the damning stolen source code with Aegis's digital watermark still buried deep inside. My heart hammered, not with fear, but with a terrible, clarifying rage. I took the stack of paper, thick and heavy as a tombstone, and walked to my bookshelf. I pulled out my copy of The Art of War. I had hollowed it out years ago, a paranoid tic from my college days. I placed the evidence inside, slid the book back into place, and shut off my monitor. The game was over. Now, I had to decide how I was going to win. I held the evidence for 24 hours, the paper feeling toxic in my hands. My analyst brain screamed at me to call Marcus, to call the feds, but my heart, that stupid, treacherous organ, whispered one last, desperate question. What if I'm wrong? What if there was an explanation? A convoluted, insane reason that wasn't this? This monstrous betrayal. It was a fool's hope, but I had to see his face when I presented it. I found him in his home office, finalizing a presentation. I didn't say hello. I just walked over and laid 3 pieces of paper on his desk, fanned out like a losing poker hand. The printout of the Cayman Islands account, the 2 first-class tickets to Dubai, the email to Sloan confirming the final asset transfer. I didn't show him the code. That was my ace. This was the test. He looked at the papers. He looked at me. And then he laughed. It wasn't a nervous chuckle. It was a deep, amused belly laugh. "Oh, Eliza," he said, wiping a tear from his eye. "God, you almost caught me." My blood ran cold. "Caught you? Honey, you're brilliant," he said, standing up and taking my hands. His were warm. Mine were ice. "You're a hell of an analyst, but you only found Act 1. He began to pace, his voice filled with a sudden, theatrical energy. "Of course it's a plan. Of course I've been moving assets, but did you ever once stop to think why?" He leaned in, his eyes intense. "It's a test, a red team operation. Your brother, Eliza. I love Marcus, but he's gotten arrogant. Aegis is too big, too confident. He thinks his systems are impenetrable. He wasn't listening to my warnings. My mind couldn't keep up. What warnings? The vulnerability. The one I told him I patched," Julian said, as if this made perfect sense. I had to show him. I had to prove that his crown jewels could be stolen. So, yes, I set up a theft. I stole the core logic, and I arranged a sale to a competitor. I was going to hand him the entire package, all the data, all the proof of his vulnerability at the end of the month. He was spinning. He was spinning so fast the room blurred. And Sloan. I whispered. Sloan was my co-conspirator. Yes, she was brilliant. She played the part perfectly. The Dubai tickets. We were flying out to meet a security consultant, a guy I hired to help document the entire sting. He stopped pacing and stood in front of me, his expression turning to one of profound, theatrical disappointment. He took my face in his hands. "Eliza, your lack of trust. You almost ruined everything. My God, if you had gone to Marcus with this half-baked theory, you would have humiliated him and destroyed my ability to protect him, to protect our family." He had done it. In less than 2 minutes, he had taken his own treason and reframed it as a heroic act of loyalty. He had made me the villain, the paranoid wife, the one who didn't trust. I was reeling. My gut screamed, liar. But the stolen code was the only piece that didn't fit his story, and he didn't know I had it. His confidence was a physical force, pressing all the air out of my lungs. I was staggered, thrown off balance by the sheer audacity. He saw the doubt in my eyes, the crack in my certainty. And he moved in for the kill. "Look," he said, his voice softening. "I get it. You're an analyst. You see pieces, not the whole picture." He wrapped an arm around me. "Let's go out on the boat this weekend. Sunday night. Just us. Me, you, and Sloan. We'll bring the champagne, and she'll walk you through the entire operation, start to finish. We'll clear the air, so you can see, once and for all, that we are all on the same team." I said yes. It was a weak, hesitant sound, but he took it as a victory. I agreed to the boat trip. I spent the next 3 days in a fog of cognitive dissonance. My analyst brain was at war with my gut. Half of me was meticulously logging Julian's IP activity, while the other half was desperately hoping he was telling the truth, that this was all just a toxic, grandiose test. On Sunday evening, I stood on the dock. The air was cold, the Seattle skyline just beginning to glitter against the deep purple dusk. The boat, Julian's 38-foot pride and joy, was named the Outsider. I used to think it was a clever nod to his startup mentality. Now, it just felt like a warning. Before I stepped aboard, I slipped my hand into my pocket. My fingers brushed against the cool metal of the digital audio recorder. It was tiny, the size of a key fob, a professional habit. Always get a record. The boat was modern, all white fiberglass and cold chrome, clinical and unwelcoming. Sloane was already on board, perched on a leather seat, looking impossibly chic in a cashmere sweater. She smiled when she saw me, a tight, thin expression that didn't reach her eyes. "Eliza, glad you could make it," she said, her voice brittle. "Let's get this over with," Julian said, his charm already wearing thin. He tossed the mooring lines and steered us out into the open water of Puget Sound. The tension was a third passenger sitting between us, cold and heavy. Julian tried to break it by popping a bottle of champagne, the thwump of the cork echoing too loudly in the evening air. He poured 3 glasses. I didn't touch mine. "Okay," Julian said, taking a large gulp of his own. "Sloane, why don't you walk Eliza through the red team op? She's concerned." Sloane launched into her explanation. It was a masterpiece of corporate doublespeak, a fire hose of technical jargon. She talked about penetration testing, decoy protocols, simulated data exfiltration, and proactive vulnerability assessment. She was smart. I'll give her that. She was using the right words, but in the wrong order. She was building a house of cards, trying to dazzle me with complexity to hide the complete lack of foundation. I let her talk for 10 minutes, just nodding, watching the way her eyes never quite met mine, how she kept glancing at Julian for reassurance. She was describing how they routed the test funds to the Cayman account as a way to mimic a real hacker's money laundering trail. "And that's why the wire transfers had to be structured in non-sequential blocks," she concluded, looking proud. I leaned forward. "That's interesting," I said, my voice quiet. "But if you were trying to mimic a genuine exfiltration, why did you use a single signature authorization for the Odysseus account? Why not a multi-sig wallet or at least a dual authorization protocol? Any real analyst would flag a single point of failure on an account that size in less than an hour." "It's sloppy." Silence. Sloane's practiced smile froze. The technical jargon died on her lips. She stared at me, her mind visibly blank. She had no idea what I was talking about. She was the COO, the logistics person, not a high-level financial risk analyst. She was out of her depth. Her eyes darted to Julian, a quick, desperate flash of panic. "Help me!" And just like that, the facade shattered. I watched Julian's face. He processed Sloane's failure, and then he processed my question. He realized I hadn't just been concerned. I had been auditing him. He saw that I hadn't believed a word. Not really. The charm, the performative disappointment, the manufactured sincerity, it all evaporated. His smile didn't fade. It was cut, like a light switch being flicked off. His face hardened into something cold and unfamiliar. He reached for the console and cut the engines. The sudden silence was shocking. The boat, no longer fighting the water, began to drift, the waves lapping gently against the hull. The city lights seemed very far away. We were alone out here, in the growing dark. Julian turned to look at me, his eyes flat, lifeless. "You're smarter than I thought, Eliza," he said. His voice was not the voice of my husband. It was the voice of a stranger, and it was as cold as the water beneath us. Sloane let out a low, rough laugh. "Oh, she's smarter than you, Julian. She actually caught you." "Shut up, Sloane," Julian snapped, but the anger was directed at me. "So what? What did you think, Eliza?" that you'd uncovered a secret. You didn't uncover anything. You're just a loose end. The politeness, the gaslighting, all of it was gone. This was them. This was real. Yes, we're selling it, Sloane said, stepping forward. She was enjoying this, her eyes glittering. And the best part, the truly hilarious part, is that you're the one who gave it to us. All those cozy family dinners. You just handed your brother's entire company right to us. You were the key, Eliza, and you were too stupid to even see the door. I looked at Julian, the man I had loved, the man I had built a life with. His face was a mask of pure contempt. She's right, he said, his voice quiet. You were an anchor, Eliza. God, I am so tired of pretending to be the loving husband. So tired of playing the grateful brother-in-law to your arrogant prick of a brother. You were the price of admission, and now, I'm done paying. My hand was already in my pocket, my fingers closing around the recorder, but I fumbled past it, grabbing my phone. I had to call Marcus. I had to warn him. I hit his name on my favorites list. The screen lit up, and then, no service. Looking for a signal, Julian asked. He held up a small black device, a simple signal jammer. I'm not an idiot. I knew you'd try something. No calls, no GPS. Out here. We're just in a dead zone. You're not just selling it, I whispered, the final piece clicking. You're selling it today, the transfer. That's why we're out here. Not bad, Sloane sneered. She gets there eventually. I will expose you, I yelled, my voice cracking, desperate. I will tell everyone. Marcus knows. He's tracking you. The evidence is hidden. You will not get away with this. Sloane smiled. You won't be telling anyone. She moved fast. She wasn't a risk analyst. She was a fighter. She lunged for me, grabbing for my pocket, for the phone she thought I was using. I stumbled back, fighting her off, shoving her hard against the cabin wall. Julian, help me, she screamed. Julian just watched, a cold, curious smile on his face. I'll kill you, Sloane shrieked, her rage making her strong. She lunged again, not for the phone this time, but at me. She put all her weight into it. I wasn't ready. I stumbled backward. My heel hit the low lip of the deck, and I lost my balance. Sloane shoved, a final, brutal push. My head connected with the chrome railing. A sickening, wet crack echoed in my ears. The world exploded in a flash of white-hot pain, and then I was falling. The cold was the first thing. It was a physical blow, a solid wall of black, icy water that stole my breath and clamped around my chest. I was submerged, the silence of the water replacing the yelling on the boat. I fought for the surface, my lungs screaming. I broke through, gasping, the freezing air burning. My head was on fire. I put a hand to my scalp, and my fingers came away dark and slick. Blood. The boat was only a few yards away, its engines idling. I could see them, Julian and Sloane, standing at the stern, looking down at me. Julian. I screamed. Julian, my head, help me. He looked at Sloane. Then he looked back at me, and he laughed. It was a full, rich laugh, the one he used at cocktail parties. Don't worry. Love, he called out, his voice carrying easily over the water. That's a nasty bump. It will probably make you forget everything. Sloane was at the controls. The engines roared to life. No, I screamed. No, Julian, don't leave me. The boat surged forward. I watched its white wake churn the dark water, the lights on its stern getting smaller and smaller. I was alone. Adrift in the freezing, black expanse of Puget Sound, miles from shore, with blood pouring from my head. The cold was already seeping into my bones, a deep numbness that was pulling me down. I was sinking. The cold was absolute. It wasn't just a temperature, it was a presence, A heavy, dark predator pulling me under. My limbs were lead. My clothes, soaked and heavy, were an anchor. I tried to kick, but my legs wouldn't respond. The wound on my head throbbed in time with my failing heart, a slow, dull drumbeat of surrender. Hypothermia was setting in, a seductive numbness that promised sleep. I saw the city lights, a cruel, glittering smear in the distance, before my vision blurred and the black water claimed me. I was almost unconscious when rough hands grabbed the collar of my jacket. I was hauled, unceremoniously, like a sack of wet cement, out of the water and onto a hard deck. I collapsed, coughing, vomiting seawater. I looked up. It wasn't the Coast Guard. The boat was matte black, low profile, and bristling with antennas. Men in dark, unmarked tactical gear moved with silent efficiency. I saw a logo on one of their jackets, a stylized silver shield, Aegis. Then, finally, I let go. I woke up to a steady beep. My head was bandaged, the throbbing reduced to a dull ache. I was wrapped in thermal blankets, an IV line snaking into my arm. The air was warm, sterile. This wasn't a hospital. The walls were reinforced, the equipment too high-spec, too military-grade. It was a secure medical bay. You always were a terrible swimmer. I turned my head. Marcus was sitting in a chair beside the bed, looking exhausted and furious. "You're late," I whispered, my throat raw. "I'm sorry, Eliza," he said, and the guilt in his voice was real. "I'm so sorry I let it go this far. I never, ever thought he'd do this." "You knew," I said. It wasn't a question. "You knew he was dirty." Marcus nodded, rubbing his eyes. "Aegis flagged him 6 months ago. Small anomalies, financial transfers that didn't add up. Then we caught him trying to brute force one of my firewalls. We've been tracking him ever since." "The boat was bugged," Marcus finished. "Audio, video, GPS. We put a tracker on the outsider 3 months ago." "Then why weren't you there?" The accusation hung in the air. "He found the primary tracker. He must have swept the boat. He activated the jammer," Marcus explained, his voice tight with anger. "We lost your audio and GPS right after you left the dock. We were blind. We had a thermal drone in the air, but by the time we launched the recovery boat, you were already gone." He paused. "The drone found your heat signature in the water. Eliza, just barely." The reality of my rescue settled on me. It wasn't a rescue. It was a recovery. I was an asset they had almost lost. "He's selling it, Marcus," I said, the words tumbling out. "He's selling your core code." "The navigation AI. It's Aegis Tech. He's selling it to a foreign competitor for $300 million. The tickets are for Dubai. In a week. He used me. He used me to get to you." Marcus didn't look surprised. He just looked harder. "I know, Eliza. We've been monitoring the buyer. We knew he was selling something. We didn't know it was the core. I needed proof. I needed his intent. The bug on the boat. It was all about getting a direct admission." "You have it now," I said, my fingers clenching the blanket. "My recorder. It's in my pocket." A small, grim smile touched his lips. "My team recovered it. We have it all. Eliza, the confrontation, the admission, the assault." He looked at the clock on the wall. It read 11:17 p.m. 2 hours. 2 hours since I had been in the water. "They're still on the boat," Marcus said. "Celebrating. We're tracking them on satellite thermal. They're drinking champagne." A cold, hard rage, purer than any emotion I had ever felt, solidified in my chest. It burned away the pain, the shock, the cold. "Give me a phone," I said. "A secure line, one they can't trace." Marcus stared at me for a moment, then nodded and handed me a heavy, encrypted satellite phone. "What are you going to do?" "Remind him who he's dealing with." I dialed the number Julian would recognize as a secure channel uplink. He would think it was his buyer. He'd have to turn off the jammer to receive it. It rang twice. "This is Thorne," his voice said. He sounded breathless, elated. In the background, I could hear Sloane laughing. I said nothing for a long moment. "Hello?" Julian said, his voice sharpening with irritation. "Who is this?" "Hello, Julian," I said. The silence on the other end was total. The laughter stopped. I could hear his sharp intake of breath, the sudden terrified clatter of a glass being dropped. "Eliza," he whispered. It was impossible. He was talking to a ghost. "You asked me if I was supportive," I said, my voice perfectly calm, perfectly even. "You said I was an anchor. How? Where are you?" he stammered. "Ever heard of Aegis Solutions?" I said, letting the coldness seep through the line. "My brother says hello." I hit the end call button and dropped the phone on the bed. "Now," I said to Marcus. "He'll panic." I spent the next 48 hours in the Aegis medical bay. The physical recovery was fast. The stitches on my head were tight. The IV drip warmed me. The bruising had already begun to set in. But I was hollowed out. The shock, the fear, the pathetic hope I'd had it all burned away, leaving only a cold, dense core of rage. The Eliza who had boarded that boat was gone. The analyst remained. Marcus was a machine. He slept in the chair next to my bed, if he slept at all. He was on secure calls, his voice a low, lethal murmur. "We're not using the police for the attack," he told me during a break. His eyes hard. "Sloane pushes you. You fall. You hit your head. It's a tragic accident. It becomes your word against two wealthy, respected tech executives. They'll lawyer up, claim you were unstable, distraught, paranoid. They'll drag your name through the mud for years." "I don't care about the attack," I said. My voice was raspy, flat. "She pushed me, but he tried to erase me. I don't want them in jail for assault. I want them ruined. I want them to have nothing." "Good," Marcus said. "We're not using the law. We're using leverage. We're going to destroy them with the one thing they can't lie their way out of information." He looked at me. "Tell me exactly what you found." "Everything." "He thinks he's clean," I said. "He and Sloane are currently at the Navi Zero office." "I know they are. They're panicking. They're wiping the servers, destroying the digital trail for Project Odysseus." "How do you know?" "Because I would," I said. "But they don't know about the hard copies, the printouts." Marcus leaned in. "Where?" "Our condo. In the study. On the main bookshelf, second shelf from the top. There's a hardcover copy of The Art of War. It's a hollowed-out safe. It's all in there. The wire transfers to the Cayman shell. The encrypted emails with Sloane. The ones detailing the asset transfer. The first-class tickets to Dubai. And the most important part, the printed source code. Your code. Marcus. With the Aegis watermark. Marcus was already on his comms, dispatching an Aegis recovery team men who specialized in quiet, fast extractions from places they weren't supposed to be. While they moved, another analyst fed us real-time data. "He's right," the analyst said. "Navi Zero's servers are being scrubbed. They're initiating a Level 3 wipe on the Odysseus directory. It's gone." "It doesn't matter," I said, almost smiling. "They're burning down an empty house." Less than an hour later, the stack of papers was on the table in my medical room. The physical, undeniable truth. "Now," Marcus said. "We stop the sale, and we gut the company." "The FBI?" I asked. "Too slow," Marcus said. "An economic espionage case takes months to build. Julian would be in Dubai, $300 million richer, before they even served a warrant. We have to cut off his oxygen. And his oxygen is his investors' money." Marcus picked up his secure phone. He didn't call the feds. He called David Forrester at Apex Ventures. He called Maria Liu at Sandstone Capital, the two lead VCs who had championed Julian, who had poured a combined $80 million into Navi Zero's Series B round. Aegis Solutions handled cybersecurity for both of their firms. They owed him. "David," I heard Marcus say, his voice low and cold. I'm not calling as a vendor. I'm calling as the man your prized CEO just robbed blind. You have a catastrophic internal fraud. Your entire investment is built on stolen property. My property. While Marcus made the calls, I worked. I sat at a terminal, my head throbbing, and I did what I do best. I took the raw data from my printouts and I composed a full financial analysis. I showed exactly how the R&D funds had been systematically diverted from component suppliers to the Project Odysseus shell company. I created a timeline that proved every dollar meant for the stealth drone had actually been used to finance Julian's and Sloane's escape plan. The VCs were panicked. It wasn't just the money, it was the exposure. Their flagship tech company, the jewel of their portfolio, was a sham. They were about to be the laughingstock of the valley. Marcus hung up his final call. "It's set," he said. "Emergency board meeting, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. They've just sent the summons. It's mandatory. Julian and Sloane can't refuse." "They'll try to lie," I said, reviewing my finished analysis. It was perfect. "Of course they will," Marcus said. "They'll say I'm a competitor. They'll say you're a vengeful wife. They're going to walk into that room thinking it's a negotiation." "Good," I said, attaching the file to a secure email. "Let them. They're walking into an execution." We were in a secure conference room at Aegis headquarters. Marcus sat beside me, his face impassive. I stared at the large monitor, my reflection looking back at me, a pale, bruised stranger with a tight bandage on her head and eyes that looked 1,000 years old. "They're joining," an Aegis tech said. 2 video windows popped up. David Forrester, Maria Liu, the other board members. Their faces were grim. Then, a new window appeared. Julian and Sloane. They weren't at home. They were in a sterile, beige hotel room somewhere, looking haggard, shadows under their eyes. But they were trying to look defiant. "David, what is the meaning of this?" Julian started, his voice a perfect blend of indignation and authority. "This meeting is highly irregular." "Shut up, Julian," David Forrester said, his voice like gravel. "We have an emergency. We have 2 other participants." Marcus gave the signal. Our video feed went live. I will never forget the look on Julian's face. It wasn't just shock. It was a visceral, physical impact, as if I had reached through the screen and punched him in the throat. His color drained. He looked, for the first time, like a cornered animal. Sloane just went rigid, her mouth falling open. "Eliza," Julian whispered, his bravado instantly collapsing. "Good morning, Julian, Sloane," I said, my voice clear and cold. I hit the share screen button. "You all received my financial analysis this morning. I'd like to walk you through it." For 10 minutes, I spoke to a silent, horrified audience. I was no longer a wife. I was a senior risk analyst delivering a finding of catastrophic failure. I showed them the Project Odysseus account. I showed them my timeline, correlating every R&D capital call with a corresponding wire transfer to the Cayman shell. I showed them how their $80 million was systematically siphoned to fund the escape. "This is fraud," Maria Liu said, her voice shaking with rage. "This," Julian sputtered. "This is a misunderstanding, a fabrication. She's a vengeful, unstable—" "I'm not finished," I said, cutting him off. The screen changed. On one side, the source code for NaviZero's revolutionary navigation AI. On the other, the proprietary, watermarked core algorithm from Aegis Solutions. A perfect, undeniable match. "This is not a misunderstanding," Marcus said, speaking for the first time. His voice filled the room, a low, controlled thunder. "That is my intellectual property. Your entire company, your 9-figure valuation, is built on a lie. Julian Thorne used his marriage to my sister to steal it." Chaos. The board members were shouting. David Forrester looked like he was going to be sick. Julian, you answer me, is this true?" Julian was trying to speak, but no words came out. He was just opening and closing his mouth, staring at my face, at the bandage on my head. He had been so sure I was at the bottom of the ocean. All in favor of the immediate termination, for cause, of CEO Julian Thorne, David said, his voice hoarse. I. All in favor of the immediate termination, for cause, of COO Sloan Rivia. I. The board votes to freeze all company assets, effective immediately. We are launching a full internal investigation. Julian, Sloan, you are locked out of all systems. Their video feeds went dark. Cut off. The true panic began. With the company accounts frozen, their personal assets tied to their shares, they were suddenly, shockingly poor. The $300 million payday was gone. Their escape plan was dead. My phone rang 2 hours later. An unknown number. I answered. Eliza. Thank God. It was Julian. He was weeping, a wet, gasping, pathetic sound. Eliza, you have to listen to me. It was her. It was all her. I said nothing. I just listened to him unravel. Sloan. She's crazy. Eliza. She's psychotic. She's the one who set up the sale. She threatened me. She's been threatening me for months. And the boat. Oh, God. The boat. She pushed you. Eliza. I tried to stop her. I turned the boat around. I tried to find you, but she wouldn't let me. She had a flare gun. She said she'd kill me too. He was desperate, just throwing words, building a new lie on the ashes of the old one. I have everything, he sobbed. I have a hard drive, her personal drive. It proves everything. It proves she masterminded the whole thing. I'll give it to you. I'll give you everything. Just tell Marcus to stop. Call him off, please, Eliza. I'm begging you. Don't let me go to prison. I let the silence stretch, listening to him choke on his own panic. One chance, I said, my voice flat. Meet me. The old Navi Zero office. The one we abandoned after the Series A. Yes, anything. Alone, I said. You come alone, and you bring everything. The old Navi Zero office was a tomb. The one before the Series A funding, before the glass-walled towers. It was on a lower floor of a downtown building, and it smelled like stale carpets and dead ambition. The only illumination came from the humming emergency lights and the red glow of the exit signs. I walked in. My footsteps echoed in the vast, empty bullpen. I wasn't scared. I wasn't the woman who had cried in her car. I was an analyst, and I was here to close a catastrophic liability. He was there, in the center of the room. Julian. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out. His suit was rumpled, his face pale and unshaven. He looked like he hadn't slept since my phone call. When he saw me, he flinched, then rushed forward, stumbling over the raised flooring where cubicles used to be. Eliza! Oh, God! Eliza! Thank you! He gasped, his voice wet. He shoved a small, black external hard drive into my hands. It's all here. Everything. It proves it. It was Sloan. He was rambling, the words spilling out in a desperate, pathetic torrent. She set up the shell company. She initiated the contact with the buyer. She was obsessed, jealous of you, jealous of Marcus. She pushed you. Eliza, I swear to God. I tried to stop her. I tried to grab you, but she's insane. This drive proves everything. It'll put her away. We can fix this. Eliza, you and me, just tell Marcus to call off the board. I looked down at the hard drive in my steady hand. Then I looked back up at his face, a mask of terror and deceit. Yeah, you're right about one thing. Julian, I said, my voice quiet, but it carried in the empty space. She did push me. I took a step closer, close enough to see the desperation in his pupils. But you were the one who laughed. Julian's face went blank. What? No, I was in shock. You're really going to pin it all on me, you absolute bastard. A new voice cut through the darkness. Sloan Rivia stepped out from the shadows of an old conference room. She looked just as terrible as Julian, but her energy was pure, white-hot rage. Julian recoiled as if he'd been shot. Sloane, what? What are you doing here? I didn't answer him. I spoke to her. He was going to give me this drive. Sloane. He said it proved you were the mastermind. He was going to pin the entire conspiracy, including my attempted murder, right on you. My call to her an hour ago had been simple. Julian is at the old office. He's panicking. He thinks he's going to turn me against you. He's trying to save himself. I didn't need to say anything else. Sloane's eyes narrowed at Julian. You coward. You weak, pathetic coward. She shrieked, the sound echoing. You came to me. You were the one whining that Marcus got all the credit, that you were doing all the work, and I was the only one who saw your genius. You're lying, Julian screamed back, his voice cracking into a panicked falsetto. You set up the Cayman accounts. You handled the transfer. Because you were too stupid to cover your tracks, she spat. I had to clean up your mess every step of the way. You were just the pretty face to charm the VCs while I did the actual work. She tried to kill you, Julian yelled, pointing a trembling finger at Sloane, his eyes wild, appealing to me. I saw her. She hit you and she pushed you. And you hit the throttle. Julian. Sloane roared back. You hit the jammer so no one could track us, and you told me to floor it? You were laughing. You said, that's one anchor off the line. They were circling each other now, two predators caught in the same trap, tearing each other apart. Every filthy detail of the theft, the lies, the cover-up, and the attack on the boat spilled out, a torrent of confessions. I just stood there, holding the drive. Click, whir, buzz. The overhead fluorescent lights flickered, then flooded the room with a harsh, clinical glare. Julian and Sloane froze, blinded, their faces twisted in mid-shout. Thank you both for the full confession. Marcus stepped out from the main entryway. He wasn't alone. He was flanked by 3 people in dark blue FBI windbreakers. Our audio-visual team appreciates your thoroughness, Marcus said, his voice like ice. We've recorded it all. The conspiracy to commit economic espionage, the wire fraud, and, of course, the competing confessions to attempted murder. Sloane went silent, rigid, her face collapsing into a mask of pure hate. Julian just broke. He sank to his knees, his hands clasped in front of him. No, no. Eliza, please. Eliza, tell them. It was a test. It was a test, please. An agent stepped forward and pulled Julian's hands behind his back. Julian Thorne, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit economic espionage and wire fraud. Another agent moved to Sloane. Sloane Rivia, you are under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy. As the agent cuffed him, pulling him roughly to his feet, Julian stared at me. The begging was gone. The panic was gone. His eyes were just bottomless pits of pure, undiluted hatred. You, he whispered. I said nothing. I turned my back on him. I walked to the old, dusty reception desk. On it sat a sleek, silver model of The Outsider, a trophy from some long-forgotten tech expo. I picked it up. It felt heavy. I walked past Julian, past the agents, past my brother, and dropped it into a metal trash can by the door. It landed with a hollow, anticlimactic clang. I didn't look back. I pushed open the glass doors and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The Seattle morning air was cold and damp, smelling of salt and car exhaust. I took a deep, shuddering breath, and for the first time in years, my lungs actually filled. I was free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you are listening from, so please drop your city or country in the comments below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories and like this video. It would also mean the world if you hit that hype button, so more people can find and hear this story.